Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and a lot of people have been using the wrong fast move on Shadow MAWILE in the Spring Cup. Now, when you think Shadow MAWILE, you often think Fire Fang, able to do very well into the steels and the grasses, but if it's against water type, it's gonna lose every single time. But Shadow MAWILE learns a different fast move, Astonish, that actually gives it incredible neutral consistency in this meta. So that way you're a lot less alignment dependent, and instead you have a lot more dynamic, flexible play. For the charge moves, I'm running Power Up Punch and Iron Head and climb to number 7 in the world with this team. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. And our first match, we're off to a very good start, leading Jellicent into Lapras. The fact that Lapras is staying into a Jellicent lead is a bit of a surprise, but honestly, that works out nicely for me, as Jellicent is going to do very well in this matchup. This team does have quite a few points in common with the other double Astonish team that I posted a few days back. This version is a lot stronger into opposing Lapras due to the Jellicent, but by adding a Ghost type Pokemon, it does make you weaker to opposing Astonish users and Cacturne. Here, my opponent is going to play for the lead, and I'm very okay with that because I don't really need alignment when I have a Pokemon as flexible as Astonish Shadow MAWILE. So I can send in the MAWILE, and now I'm going to look for a full farm down. MAWILE's energy goes everywhere, in comes Poliwrath, and I'm more than happy to pivot out here and send in Amoonguss. Amoonguss, these Astonishes are shredding through the Poliwrath. Poliwrath will get to debuff my attack with an Icy Wind, but I'm going to farm up and then fire off this Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb has been debuffed, but it will still get this Poliwrath deep into the red if they let it through. They end up shielding, and they're going to play to the CMP tie as Amoonguss is slightly too bulky to get farmed down. Back in comes the MAWILE, and let's ramp up our attack with a Power-Up Punch. So now these Astonishes are at +1. There's a switch from my opponent into a Cradilly. Oh no! Another thing about MAWILE, it's a lot faster to steal damage than Klefki is. That's gonna be a one-shot of the Cradilly. In comes Poliwrath, that gets Astonished down. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Jellicent into Ferrothorn, very bad lead. I'm going to save switch into MAWILE. My opponent is going to farm up some energy and send in Golisopod. Now, Golisopod is a Pokemon that does resist Iron Head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play incredibly aggressively for switch advantage. I'm going to double shield the MAWILE, and I'm going to be fully farming it down. This way, I can exit with a massive amount of energy, and with switch advantage, the Ferrothorn is not going to have a good day going up against the Amoonguss. And whatever they bring in, my guess is my energy can probably do pretty well against. They send in Lantern. I don't have Play Rough, but of course my opponent doesn't know that. So I Power Up Punch. They respect a boosted Play Rough, and now this is going to be a +2 Power Up Punch. My opponent is going to shield that as well, and look at these Astonishes just deleting the Lantern. This poor Lantern lost so much HP, and now Amoonguss is in a prime position to close out this game. Lantern goes for the Thunderbolt, that's fine for Amoonguss. In comes Ferrothorn, I farm up a ton of energy, and now I'm just going to use Jellicent as a damage sponge. Jellicent is not particularly useful into my opponent's team, so my best use of it is just to throw it away and force my opponent to waste 2 Power Whips to pick up the knockout. So they are now able to secure the KO, and I get to send back in the Amoonguss. Amoonguss already had back-to-back foul plays. The first is going to land, getting my opponent very low. I throw one more, and this foul play will easily KO the Ferrothorn, denying any stored energy that they have. Back in comes the Lantern, but Lantern is just not going to get the energy that it needs. It needs 2 charge attacks, and it cannot get there. Sludge Bomb KOs the Lantern, and despite a very bad lead, MAWILE put in massive work in the mid-game. Same lead as last game, leading to the Ferrothorn, so I'm going to save switch into the Astonish MAWILE. Opponent stays in, and they actually throw a Power Whip. This does deny my full sneak, but a Power Whip, of course, is resisted. They're now going to send in a Shadow Tentacruel, and I will be firing off the Power Up Punch. Astonish is going to add up quite nicely in this matchup, and now I'm going to be boosted. Opponent throws on 7. This can only be an Acid Spray, so I'm more than happy to let this go, as I can survive it, and now I get to fire off a boosted Iron Head. This is resisted, but I don't think anyone told MAWILE, as MAWILE is going to nearly pick up the KO onto Tentacruel. Jellicent is going to get a nice farm down, and with Tentacruel out of the way, things should be looking pretty good for Amoonguss to sweep in the back. In comes Amoonguss. It's going to be Mantine in the back. And this is a Pokemon that does have a positive matchup into the Amoonguss. So it's a bit of a tough spot to be in, but Amoonguss is an absolute demon in this meta. So Amoonguss is going to see if it can play its way out. First of all, we are going to go for a foul play bait that is going to grab the shield from the opponent, and this Mantine is already below half HP just off of Shadow Astonishes. I am going to be committing the final shield, going for the Sludge Bomb, and I know that I just need an energy advantage on this Jellicent if they shield. They're actually going to let that go, sending in the Ferrothorn, realizing that if they shielded, I could just pivot into the Jellicent, and then they would have been in a significant amount of trouble. They no shield. It's going to be a CMP tie here. Ferrothorn goes for the Power Whip, but that's very okay. I can now just win this game by fully committing to farm. Jellicent is going to be met with a Power Whip, and this doesn't even KO, so it turns out I don't even need the farm down. I can just throw the double surf and take the win. In the moment, I was hyper focused on getting the farm down, but then I realized, oh wait, I have 2 moves on the Jellicent because Jellicent is so bulky. It can withstand those super effective hits, and despite some really tough leads to start, we're able to take the win. The third match against Jason, 2890, and he's leading Credilli once again. The safe switch into the MAWILE. MAWILE unanswered here, and I will immediately be attack dropped by this Rock Tomb. So now I am at -1, looking to farm up quite a bit, and I'm going to be firing off this Iron Head. I know I'm debuffed, but Iron Head is super effective damage. Credilli barely hangs on. There's a switch into Weezing, and I will immediately fire off the Iron Head just to guarantee the shield or massive damage. That is going to get the shield from my opponent. Weezing is going to be forced to throw here, and now I will get valuable information. Because if they have Brutal Swing, they will throw it. The fact that they throw Sludge tells me they do not have Brutal Swing, which is very good news for me, because they would always choose to throw their cheapest charge move there. So they're probably Sludge plus Overheat. So I get to send in the Jellicent, and they are going to be firing off Sludges. So Jellicent, very comfortable spot here since it is a wall to this energy. That is going to be the Overheat, and now I just need this Weezing out of the way. So 1 Hex and a Surf will pick up the knockout. In the back, my opponent has their own Jellicent, and I'm in a prime position with Amoonguss. In comes Credilli. Credilli going for a potential CMP sack swap there, but unfortunately I did not throw my move. And now, even though I'm at -1, I'm just completely in the driver's seat with this Amoonguss. I'm now in back-to-back foul plays, which means my opponent knows a move is going to land here, so they will just let the first go. I can Astonish down, and we're able to take the win. The tough opponents continue in the next match. Leading Jellicent into Weezing, obviously it will depend on their moveset. They switch out, and that gives me all the information that I need. If they're switching a Lapras into a Jellicent, that means their Weezing is on Sludge plus Overheat. And I'm very comfortable playing out this matchup with the Jellicent. I grab an early shield, which is quite nice. I'm very okay absorbing these Sparkling Arias, and I'm just going to keep spamming out these Shadow Balls until I will eventually get knocked out by the Lapras. But if I'm up a shield, then the Weezing is not going to be able to do a whole lot into my backline. So they are going to be firing off another charge attack, and I'm very comfortable letting that through. Sparkling Aria is going to get me low. I will make it to the Surf, and Surf is going to get this Lapras deep into the red. It's not going to be enough to knock out, but it will get them very, very low. They are going to be firing off their last second Sparkling Aria, and now I can take this time to get an energy lead on Shadow Mawile. Shadow Mawile now at an advantage in this game. In comes Weezing, and let's immediately fire off the Iron Head and ramp up the pressure. Iron Head is going to be shielded. Weezing farming up a massive amount of energy. I really do not want to try and call a bait here and get nuked through 2 shields, so I will end up shielding. It is going to be a Sludge bait. This, I believe, can only be a Sludge. It's not enough energy for the Overheat, so I will actually end up letting that through. There's a catch attempt onto the Ferrothorn, but I'm able to hold on to my energy and now begin to fire off these power-up punches. And these power-up punches are going to ramp up Astonish more and more and more. My goal here is I know that my opponent can never farm me down, so I just get to shred them with Astonishes, let the Mawile go after they throw energy, and then I have a very clear path forward to victory with the Amoonguss. As Amoonguss is still going to have the shield intact, and I can very comfortably make it to a Sludge Bomb because of all the Astonish damage I was able to do earlier. So in comes the Weezing, immediately met with a Sludge Bomb, and this is why I do like Sludge Bomb over Grass Knot on Amoonguss, specifically for these type disadvantage matchups. So we're able to knock out the Weezing and take the win. Jellicent into Credilli, another bad lead. I'm going to save switch into Mawile. Opponent is going to respond with a Fire Fang Mawile. Fire Fang Mawile throws on alignment. They're ramping up their damage with a power-up punch. Punch, but I'm just going to click Iron Head. I know Iron Head is going to pick up the knockout here. This is neutral damage, and they let it go. They try to call the power-up punch bait, and Astonish reigns supreme. In comes Wheezing. Unfortunately, I'm only able to make a power-up punch here. I would not get to an Iron Head, so the power-up punch at the last second, not going to do much. In comes Credilli. Arguably, I think I could have just stayed Jellicent versus Credilli and no-shielded the first move before switching, but I decided to pivot into Amoonguss right away. Amoonguss, I will go for the foul play bait here, assuming that my opponent is going to commit a shield, because Credillis love nothing more than to commit shields and really try and debuff attack. Now, I debated letting the second Rock Tomb go because it wouldn't knock out, because Bullet Seed is double resisted here, but I decided that I did want to preserve a bit of HP on the Amoonguss. Sludge Bomb is going to be shielded up, and now my opponent is going to be firing off more energy. This is a tough call to make, because I am heavily debuffed now. I will go for the Sludge Bomb. There's a catch onto the Wheezing, so this is not going to do much because it is -3. I decided to stay in and let the Amoonguss get knocked out, because Jellicent should be able to build up to the back-to-back moves. The thing I didn't realize in the moment, I thought Jellicent won this CMP by a few. It's actually an IV-dependent CMP. So this game will come down to, do they have a high-rank Credilli? If so, I win the game. If they have an attack-weighted or a poor IV Credilli, I will actually lose off the CMP tie. So Surf is going to KO. In comes Credilli, and we're going to get the knockout with the Shadow Ball. So it looks like they must have had a high-rank Credilli. Shadow Ball KOs, and despite quite a few bad leads, we're able to take the win. Speaking of bad leads, though, Amoonguss is a nightmarish lead. I'm going to save switch into MAWILE, and my opponent responds with Lapras. I'm going straight for the power-up punch, looking to ramp up this damage. MAWILE does have the ability to flip this in the 2-shield if I so want. My opponent is going to fire off energy before I'm able to get to the Iron Head. Now, this is a tough call to make. A power-up punch will not knock out from here, so I'm expecting my opponent to no-shield, so I'm going to full send the Iron Head, but they respect it. Had I gone for the power-up punch, things could have got really scary there for my opponent, because I could have astonished down before they made it to a third Aria. But instead, I don't get much of an advantage out of this other than some farm on the Jellicent, which is not going to go super far against the bulky Amoonguss. Opponent is going to go for the Ice Beam there, as Ice Beam does do slightly more damage than Sparkling Aria. And now when Amoonguss rehits the field, I get to fire off this Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball connects, in comes my Amoonguss, in the back is Dugong, and this is probably the only time that I ever wish that I had Grass Knot on Amoonguss, but Sludge Bomb helped in so many games that realistically, I'm still going to keep Sludge Bomb. In that instance, had I just double power-up punch in the mid-game, that game could have been very different. Leading into a Shadow Galarian Wheezing, there's a safe switch into Lapras, so it looks like there are quite a few teams, or at the very least, teams that I saw today at Leaderboard Elo, that are just completely disrespecting Jellicent on the lead. Lapras can soft lose it, but it's still not an ideal use of the Lapras, because Lapras is going to have to, unfortunately, give the Jellicent an advantage coming out of this matchup, whether it's an energy advantage or whether it's a shield advantage. So I will farm up just shy of the back-to-back Surfs, and I'm going to unleash the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball into the Lapras, picks up the knockout. I'm pretty close to a move. In comes Mantine as the final Pokemon, and I'm feeling pretty good about my chances here, because as with almost every team, there is not an Astonish resist on my opponent's remaining Pokemon. So when I send in MAWILE and they bring in Wheezing, I'm just going to bring in Amoonguss. I'm always going to no-shield here. I'm going to make them overheat me. So I will no-shield. They do go for the overheat, but this is fine because I'm still going to win the game. Because I have 2 shields and an Astonish Shadow MAWILE. And we are just going to power-up punch our way through everything. Now, considering their final Pokemon is a water type, if I had Fire Fang, I couldn't win this game. And that's because, even when boosted, I would never be able to farm down that Mantine. But here, as they fire off a debuff Sludge and send back in the Mantine, watch this. We just get to absolutely degen our way through this Pokemon. They no-shield the power-up punch because they know I would get to another one, but they're getting knocked out by this next Astonish. We Astonish down the Mantine and take the win. Hopping into the final match, and we're leading Jellicent into Empoleon. So I do think the slight adjustment to Jellicent ended up being a pretty nice one. I don't think it's possible to win with this team against Shadow Cacturne unless the Shadow Cacturne severely misplays, but I did feel like Jellicent was winning a lot of leads in the non-Cacturne games, which did put me on a pretty solid footing. Here, Empoleon barely hangs on. Nice matchup knowledge by my opponent. Drill Peck is going to connect, and now we'll see what they decide to bring in. They bring in Golisopod. I just fire off the Shadow Ball. Unfortunately, it looks like my opponent did get their fast move denied there. I'm now going to send in the MAWILE, and MAWILE is going to be met with an Aqua Jet. And considering they've lost almost 2 full Pokemon, I'm always going to be shielding up the MAWILE here. They have their own MAWILE in the back, so they're running an overload strategy. Triple weak to the Jellicent, but just saying that once Jellicent's out of the way, the opponent's probably weak in the back. Here, they realize they can't farm down. I would have made another move, so they're forced to go for the power-up punch. And now I can send in the Jellicent. These hexes are adding up. They're forced to throw once again, and this MAWILE, purely off of Ghost fast moves, is going to get farmed all the way down. Hexes from the Jellicent, Astonishes from my MAWILE, and my Shadow Amoonguss. We get to Astonish down Golisopod and take the win. All in all, I've been really loving playing the Spring Cup meta so far, which to me is a huge surprise, because looking at the meta on paper, I was not particularly excited for it. But with how flexible the Astonish users are, I really do feel like there is a tremendous amount of neutral play, providing you're running the right Pokemon. Granted, there are always going to be some people who resort to like Gastrodon, hard win, hard lose style strategies, but in that instance, I don't really feel like those players can complain when their Gastrodon ends up on a Tropius. Like, that's the type of Pokemon that you're running. Those are the lines that you're choosing to play, but there's so much neutral, flexible play available, and I feel like that means that in comparison to some metas where it feels like maybe only 50% of games are winnable, it feels like probably 70, 80, 90% of games are winnable most of the time in the Spring Cup. And I feel like that's the sign of a really good meta, where even if you don't necessarily have the greatest alignment ever, like there was a couple games where there was Amoonguss on a Mantine, for example, the fact that the Astonish users are unresisted in this meta more or less means that you still have a way of trying to work out of those difficult positions. Whereas like if you have a Gastrodon on a Tropius, you're just never winning that game ever. So I'm a really, really big fan of it. I think the double Astonish strategy, whether you try this one, which MAWILE, it's just night and day improved with Astonish over Fire Fang. Fire Fang, it plays a lot more like Gastrodon. It hard wins, hard loses. So if you end up with a MAWILE on a Jellicent, you're just going to lose that game. But with Astonish, it is so much more flexible play because Astonish isn't resisted, so even in its worst matchups, it's still like outputting very nice damage like against that Tentacruel. So whether you end up using this version or the previous version, it really comes down to what you're seeing more of. If you see a ton of Cacturn, I would run the previous version, as the previous version with Klefki is a lot stronger into Cacturn. But if you're running into a lot more Lapras and Fire Fang MAWILE, then this version of the team is built a lot stronger, as Jellicent can completely shut down those Pokemon. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.